Today is the 14th Sunday in the church's year A. And our first reading today comes from the book of the prophet Zechariah, chapter 9, from verse 9 to verse 10. Second reading from Paul's letter to the Romans, chapter 8, verse 9 and verse 11 to 13. And our gospel is coming from the Holy Gospel according to Matthew, chapter 11, verse 25 to 30. And the good news I share with you today is that the way of Jesus is the way to find peace and to find rest. The way of Jesus is the way to find peace and to find rest. Therefore, our prayers today will be for the grace to learn this way of Jesus, so that we can find peace, so that we can find rest. Now, my friends, it is St. Paul who wrote in his letter to the Romans, chapter 8, verse 22 to 23, describing the eternal groaning in all creation, groaning to give birth, growing to be set free. This eternal groaning in everything in nature, including human beings, create longing and restlessness. Trying to speak about this prayerfully, this musical author and Quigley wrote this musical piece. There is a longing in our hearts, O Lord, for you to reveal yourself to us. There is a longing in our hearts for love we only find in you, our God. There's a longing in our hearts, a longing. And going on, this music talks about those various ways, those various things we long for: justice, for freedom, for mercy, whether we are in grief, whether we are in sorrow, or in our weaknesses. This is a groaning in human beings. And so we imagine this groaning to include anything and everything, any condition and every condition. Now, my friends, the people of the Old Testament, having experienced the slavery in Egypt, having experienced the Exodus journey, having experienced the freedom of coming into the promised land, and when in living in the promised land and the way of life, have experienced defeat and exile and return and exile and dispassions. So we can imagine the longing in their hearts at each time. Longing for peace, longing for freedom, longing for growth. And people in their history capitalize on this series of longings to manipulate the people's expectation and sometimes to lead people astray, just as it happens in our world today. People capitulating or capitalizing on the other people's longing to sell false hope to them, to lure them to where they milk them dry or destroy them. Now, the prophet Zechariah, as we heard in our first reading, gave a picture of when this longing, this restlessness in people can be satisfied. And it talks about that in the reign of a king who comes in humility, who comes peaceably, who comes without violence and arrogance. Who is that king? Us as people of faith say it's Christ. Christ is the king who comes humbly, peaceably, not without violence and without arrogance. And I'm sure it did not just happen to us as Christians. This was also what happened in the life of the people during the time of Jesus. And you can imagine the sentiment that we celebrate on Palm Sunday when Jesus rode into Jerusalem riding on the back of a donkey. And the people came and started receiving him with all joy. Why? Because that picture of Jesus riding into Jerusalem was what the prophet Zechariah told us in our first reading today. Daughters of Jerusalem, see your king comes to you riding on the back of a donkey. And knowing the peaceable nature of Jesus' ministry, the nonviolent nature of Jesus' ministry, the humility of Jesus' ministry, people could not restrain themselves, and that's why they shouted, Hosanna to the Son of David. Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord, Hosanna in the highest. They see or they saw that Jesus was fulfilling this prophecy of Zechariah, where their restlessness will be met and their problems taken care of. Now, although Christ had come, although Christ has accomplished the success of all he came to do, you can say, why has our restlessness continued? Why has our longings continued as if nothing had happened, as if Christ never came? My dear friends, I think the reason why all this has continued to happen is that we as human beings always want to be in control. We as human beings always want to define what is freedom. We always want to define what is justice, what is truth, what is peace. And that's why you see all the problem in our political communities today. The Republicans will think this is the way of justice and freedom. Democrats will think this is the way of justice and freedom. The Aguadorites will think this is the way of justice and freedom. And obedience will think this is the way of justice and freedom. We all want to define it. I want to define it. You want to define it. Everybody wants to define it. And we cannot think together of what is justice, what is freedom, what is peace. Because we all want to be in control and to do this definition. You know, a reality of this came to me. One day I was trying to go and swim. And you can imagine jumping into the pool. And I want to enjoy conquering the waters. And what was in my mind as I struggled was to be in control. And that my control was trying to put my feet on the ground. And my friend was telling me, Father Uju, take it easy, relax, let go so that you can float. And I want to be in control. And I was trying to put my feet on the ground, and that was leading to drowning, and it was not helping. This is the journey of all of us. And this is why Christ today presented the child, the trusting nature of a child as a key to victory over struggles, over challenges. And from there now he invites us to him and say, come to me, all you who labor and are overburdened, and I will give you rest. The trusting nature of a child is a key to victory. And so he said, trust me, come to me, and you will find rest. Now, you know that these things that bring us to longing, these things that bring us to restlessness, are the things that make us to labor. And there are things for under the weight of which we are overburdened and we're overwhelmed. We know that some of these longings can be perennial in nature. Something like, longing for food, longing for love, longing for freedom, longing for justice. And they are perennial in nature in the sense that we do not get them once and think they are all secure. No. Every day we got to continue to show we love. Every day we got to continue to struggle for justice, to struggle for freedom, because there are people and there are institutions ready to take away our freedom, ready to redefine what justice is, ready to define what freedom is, ready to redefine what faith is. There are people, there are institutions, there are things that always trying to drain them from the people. And because of this, we always continue to struggle. We always continue to long. We always continue to work. We always continue to be overburdened. And reality shows that sometimes we overcome, many times we don't overcome, and we succumb under the weight of our burden. At such times, the longing of every heart will be, who comes to take away this burden from me? Who comes to take it away? Today, Jesus presents himself as one who can take this burden away from us. And that's why he said, Come to me, all you who labor and are overburdened, and I will give you rest. But he did not stop there. If you want to rush to him, he said, shoulder my yoke and learn from me, for I'm meek and humble of heart, and you'll find rest for your soul. So it's like somebody who is coming to do what? Give us, take away our burden and give us a yoke. That's what it looks linguistically. And this is why many people cannot invest in their Christian faith, because they think, I don't want to take more burdens. I have burdens enough. I don't want to take more burdens. I don't want to go to your church. I don't want to take up ministries. I don't want to do this. I don't want to do that. I have too much already on my plate. And so they have continued to live their life because they think it's always an extra burden. My dear friends, about this, the church wants us to know that the yoke of Christ is not an extra piece of timber to be added to the burdens already we are carrying. The yoke of Christ is not an extra timber to be added to the weight we are already bearing, the burden we are already having. No, the yoke of Christ is an attitude we are called to imbibe. An attitude, once we imbibe it, the burden that we bear becomes easier to bear. It is like someone who has a mile journey to make, and along the way, the feet continues to burn and he cannot continue to go. He cannot, she cannot. And then somebody offers an Air Jordan tennis shoe, and then you begin to walk briskly and you get to the end. It is like the experience that we all had. I don't know how many of you have read my book, My Cross is My Opportunity. And there I was reflecting on an experience of life, an experience which we all had, going to fetch water. And you cannot put the gallon of water on your head, it's going to crush your head. So I got to put a pad on it. And that pad on it makes the load easier to carry. This is the yoke of Christ. It is an attitude that helps make the load easier to bear. It's an attitude that makes the journey easier to go. It's an attitude. And that's why he ended by saying, learn from me. It's something you learn and you begin to imbibe and put it into practice so that the journey becomes easier and the load becomes lighter for us to bear. And what is that yoke of Jesus that he is offering? And he calls it humility and meekness. And humility is that which helps us to accept our limitations and our dependence on God and our dependence on one another. That we are not complete alone. We cannot do it all alone. Our strength cannot take us all alone. Our monies cannot take us all alone. We need others. We need help. And ultimately, other people we reach out are people also in need and who are in need help. So the ultimate person who has no need and who does not need the help of anyone is God. And this is the ultimate person we need. And that's what our humility helps us to acknowledge. And what does when they talk about meekness brings to us? What is that meekness? Meekness that becomes a patient and gentle disposition that we have to put into life's activities, life's struggles, life's restlessness to make it easier. And when you now think about the benefits of meekness, you remember the Beatitudes where Jesus said, "Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth." They will reach the height which they are longing for, the prize they are longing for. They will get it because they have put on that attitude of humility, that attitude of patience. Therefore, the yoke of Jesus was the way of humility. The way of Jesus, the yoke of Jesus was the way of meekness. This way is not a way of weakness. It is a way of strength. It is the way, as people say, we're stooping down to conquer, putting an attitude that helps us to overcome. It is an attitude, as Martin Luther King Jr. would tell us, when we are met with brute force, we encounter it with soul force. It's an attitude. That's the yoke of Christ that is offering you. So as Christians, we are given a different approach to the longings of life, the way of Jesus. And this is what St. Paul in our second reading today brings to our attention as the way of the Spirit. We have, as people of faith, are no longer people of the flesh alone. We are people of the Spirit. And so we have a new way of approaching the longings of our heart, the burdens that we carry, the cross that we carry. Because after all, what is that cross you're carrying? What is that burden you're bearing? As a father, as a mother, as a worker, as a teacher, as a lawyer, as a doctor, what is that you call your cross? What is that you call your burden? It is to bring food on the table for the family. It is put a roof on the head for the family. It's to make sure there's success of the children. That burden does not end because you put it down. That burden ends because you get to the end. And because it is heavy and it brings you burden, all you need is the way to carry it so that it becomes lighter and becomes easier. And this is what the Jesus way is offering us. So our crosses, our burdens, our struggles, our restlessness, and our longings endure because there are forces in nature, there are forces among people, even our spiritual enemy, the devil, trying to rob us of our freedom as children of God, the justice we have to enjoy as children of God, the peace we need as children of God. And so our struggle continues. But Jesus gave us a way to encounter them and to defeat them. And that is the way of meekness. And that's the way of humility. And if we follow this, we will get the strength we need to get to the end. We get the joy we need to get to the end. And when it gets tough for us, we need to re-strategize to beef up that which we call our humility and our meekness. It is like when we are fetching stream in those days and we reach a kogu, that's what we call it, and then we rearrange our head parts so that we can get to the end. Because along the way, the part has getting smaller and smaller. So when we get to a kogu, we rearrange the head part so that we can get there. We are all on our way. We want to get to the end. Take on the yoke of Jesus, the way of humility, the way of meekness. Along the way, you get struck, the struggle gets tougher and tougher. Stop and rearrange the strength rearrange your head part as it were, rearrange your footwear as it were, rearrange your attitude so that you can beef up that attitude of Christ, that way of Christ, the way of humility and way of strength. Come to Jesus. He will teach you. So we end with this piece of song. Are you weary? Are you heavy hearted? Tell it to Jesus. Tell it to Jesus. Are you grieving over joys departed? Tell it to Jesus alone. Tell it to Jesus. Tell it to Jesus. He is the friend as well known. You have no other such a friend or brother. Tell it to Jesus alone. So, my dear friends, you have no permission to let the burdens you carry to kill you. Rather, you have the permission to come to Jesus, to learn from Jesus, to practice the manner of Jesus, so that the burdens becomes lighter. Peace be with you, and may God help us to learn this way. Amen.